Hello there everyone and welcome back. It has sadly been about a week's time since my last Battlefleet Gothic video, well hell, since my last video in general, so I'm here to rectify that finally, as we're going to continue on more with my endeavors with the Asuryani for at least Season 3. And I apologize for the lapse in the video content, but with family down for about a week's time, it was pretty hectic here. It was pretty busy, needless to say. So that is my excuse and I'm sticking to it here, but we do have a rematch with Fiat for this one here. And while this was earlier on, before my week hiatus, so it's going to be a little bit odd trying to remember the details of this match a little bit, since we already seen one match with Fiat, so it kind of goes without saying what to possibly expect for this match. It's going to be up close, it's going to be brutal, and it's going to be very similar to the fleet before. Only difference is Fiat does, I suppose, keep in mind that I do have a light cruiser in this fleet, for there were scanner pulses when they arguably were probably not needed, at least with the possibility of tracking senses being a possibility for really any other Asuryani fleet that does not utilize light cruisers or frigates of any kind. So that is probably what it is there, just being metagamed a tiny little bit, even though the light cruiser is going to, in all honesty, be hard pressed to at least find value in this fleet, as opposed to maybe more Phoenixes or an additional cruiser, as the 5 cruiser fleet that I kind of started with as an example. But it's going to be very similar to what was before. 3 battleships, the Impalers and Fighter Bay, and was it 2 frigates, one of which is just going to be hanging back there, which, as I kind of found out after the fact when I faced off against Fiat before, this thing is just going to hang back and just not contribute at all to kind of alleviate the possibility of maybe losing due to all the ships being destroyed, because we kind of saw how close that match was to be before. I didn't hit with nearly as many torpedoes as I could have, and that easily makes this a very brutal victory for me if those torpedoes can connect. And with the fighters kind of being launched, I'm assuming they are fighters, it's a little uncertain why they would be Impalers otherwise, especially since what I said, I'm kind of being metagamed a slight bit, and Phoenixes with their buff kind of does allow for a lot of, at least them being a common occurrence, especially with 4 cruiser fleet that you would normally see against Asuryani. It's just hard to tell if they're 2 Phoenixes or just a mix of other carrier ships at this point, I suppose. Either way, there's the scanner pulse that did reveal my light cruiser, so I do hang it back behind the others to hopefully avoid it getting sniped preemptively. And I do hear the Wraith Bone shift there, and I try and use this as maybe a possibility to kind of boost and engage. Although, it's kind of like last time, I kind of am stuck with only having 2 objectives to really secure, whereas Fiat kind of sort of gets the convenience of 3 points, even though Fiat is not going to commit to playing a drawn-out type of objective-based game anyway, as all 3 of the ships are kind of revealed now to a vague extent as we see the shots being unleashed. And although pulsars are getting staggered a slight tiny bit there, it goes without saying, without the hull fields, it's going to be brutal really quickly. It's just a matter of killing these things as quickly as possible, since I am after all being hit by the ramming blades too. And I fired torpedoes here, but sadly I was too slow in the reaction. They did not connect with that second battleship. And it goes without saying, we're going to have another kamikaze type of run, but if only I was a tiny bit faster reacting, those torpedoes could have been a massive difference, since the brace for impact the brace for impact actually would have reduced the damage. Who am I kidding? It just would ignore the armor, the 50 armor of their ships. And I'm getting a little too close for comfort here. Ideally, I want to try and engage them at 9,000 unit range. At least that way I get a proper arc, proper angle, and it makes it a little bit easier to hit with torpedoes, since I don't think I got the torpedo shots I wanted there. Never mind the fact that I'm playing into Fiat's hand a little bit, since I'm pretty sure I mentioned before how my hit point pool is quite notably lower, as I miss another salvo of torpedoes there, goes without saying, to pretty much I don't have the hit point advantage like I did before with the 5 cruiser fleet, due to the light cruiser hindering a little bit. And I feel like this was a big mistake for me, just boosting in front there, because with 3 fire assaults that thing could have just burned to death. It's unfortunate that is not the match I want, and it ultimately comes down to the fact that none of my torpedoes actually connected for a simple matter. The simple truth of it. It's always bitter when it comes down to a simple little fact, but hell, just taking advantage of being behind their ships could have done the difference as well for me. Alright, so now we're on to match number 2, and we're face off against Space Marines and what is it, Volpez Intura? I can't remember it since it kind of gone by too quickly. There we go, Inculta. So, this one, I guess actually Volpez did make comments in my YouTube videos before, so I kind of recognize the name at least in game, so there's always that for a plus. Although what we're going to be experiencing for this type of fleet is we're going to be face off against Devil Battle Barge with the Lance variant at that, and a single strike cruiser with a frigate. So it's not going to be something I'm quite familiar with, if I were to be perfectly honest, since most of the battle barges I do encounter are the ones with the boring torpedoes and more of the bombardment cannons. Although technically with the Lance firepower, it is pretty damn close to the same kind of Lance weaponry as what we see with the standard, 6 strike cruiser fleet. Well, that's technically not really true, since some of those variations do also include some fighter bays or hangar bays to kind of help deal with vision and protection from torpedoes and abilities like that. So even then, it's arguably more Lance potential. Just missing out on the bombardment cannons for the critical hit potential, especially if they can get my generators down. But we are going to see more of Disruption Overcharge here, and it's going to be impactful, it goes without saying. Although I do have some gas clouds in the middle of the map, they are a little bit sparse, so it comes down heavily to where I'm positioned, where I'm engaging my opponent. But my opponent's utilizing Micro Warp Jump as well, and they're going to be high in the very top right of the map with the flagship. I don't pay nearly as much attention of the strike cruiser, or at least the capture speed, but I kind of realize it is a strike cruiser at some point due to speed difference alone, as we're going to see here. The flagship's just high in the little corner on the right there, and I still am curious to why you hide the ship there for a Micro Warp Jump, since you are mitigating a little bit of the potential there. Sure, maybe the match is going to be over well before objective score matters in all seriousness, but it could grab the objective on the left. It could probably just stay with the fleet to kind of hide the fact you have a Micro Warp Jump as well. Even though I kind of was not prepared for it, perhaps in this exchange. And hell, the last Space Marine opponent I played up as, even they used their Micro Warp Jump, I would argue, in the poor manner, since I was able to isolate and just kill that battle barge way before the rest of their fleet even was able to support it. So even then, your sneaky maneuver of hiding, or at least trying to outmaneuver me, can easily backfire. But needless to say, we see a speed difference easily of the strike cruiser and the battle barge here. It seems like I don't quite recall if I'm certain it is a strike cruiser or not. Oh well, this kind of gives it away. Just the capture speed alone kind of confirms that, doesn't it now? Either way, we spot the frigate. The fighters are convenient enough to spot it there, but with the assault running, I'm kind of wondering if I can grab it or not, especially now that Volpez is kind of boosting forward. I'm not going to have the convenience of all my ships going in at once, and I kind of can't remember what my thought process here. I think it was to try and conceal myself inside the gas cloud, because as you can see here, I'm not getting the best pulsar shots I would have liked due to close proximity. It's really easy to kind of negate a lot of that pulsar fire, especially with frigates or something small and nimble like that, since it took hardly any armor damage. Although I do kind of question the brace for impact. It's really the convenience, as we now get our Micro Warp Jump maneuver here, to kind of... yeah, I didn't quite get the damage I wanted on the frigate, but at least in this case, Volpez does have the entire fleet, at least vaguely, to get her there. And I'm ready for my attack on the flagship, which does have supercharged Void Shield. I'm waiting for it there. It activates at the last second, but thankfully due to the staggering, I don't really miss out on a lot of damage potential. It maybe intimidates me a little bit too much because I'm going to start turning my attention to our battle barge, even though I'm getting a perfect maelstrom on this flagship right now, with it being wedged between a rock and a hard place, the stasis bomb in its face, and being hit with the maelstrom at the exact same time. Although a lot of that reasoning could be because it's also in the gas cloud I was trying to hide in as well. But generators down as a constellation prize for the disruption overcharge, and that is really inconvenient there. So The one cruiser on the left, top left there, is going to gas cloud to give it a chance to recharge that hollow field some. And while I am splitting my fire a little bit here, it is good promising damage, at least on the flagship so far, and I'm hoping to get some good hits with the torpedoes here. The generator is down, or at least, well, actually the deck's temporary damage, which does help a little bit because it negates the brace for impact, so there's always a plus there if nothing else. Torpedoes on the light cruiser is going to help complement that, although it's not nearly going to be as impactful, and this time the generator is down. Sadly, I never get around to prioritizing the generator on the flagship though, which can be quite significant due to, again, the supercharged void shield and the amount of time it had to kind of recharge its shields during that period as well. Since I am to a limited extent kind of exploiting maybe the glitch, the bug that the Spear Crystal Focus and Disruptor Overcharge has. But this looks like a prime opportunity to try and kill this thing off. Sadly, my cruisers and the awkwardness of the bombers, since I'm kind of not utilizing my fighters to the best of their ability, is forcing me to disengage to minimize the damage that they're doing. And this is where the split fire could be biting me in the ass a little bit. The engine is damaged at least, so there's always that. Because right now we have 2 battle barges at below half health. So I don't need to tell you how helpful this is, or how convenient this would be if I were to just kill the flagship right now, if all this damage was kind of focused properly. But a lot of that, again, could have had to do with this inconvenience of the gas cloud there. Since my crew is slowly getting crippled, I'm well below half at this point on just about all my ships, losing 1 strike cruiser as that bonus, and Disruption Overcharge is now starting to capitalize on top of my Phoenix there. Thankfully, the supercharged void shield's not doing the best right now, but it is recharging now since the Lascans is shooting at the wrong target. That's kind of what happened there. So I did not get the killing blow I would have liked with the pulsars, since I don't think the Lascans hit the strike cruiser as opposed to the flagship itself. So we got 2 limping battle barges, but no reliable way to finish them off due to the lack of torpedoes. The only one that did have torpedoes was the one that lost all its crew. So I'm a bit bitter about these 2 matches, and these were about a week ago. So the matches you're going to see here on out is going to be recent, more possibly up to date and more refined. Wishful thinking. Alright, we're going to have ourselves a rematch with Necron, and this is not going to be like what we had before with, damn it, I can't remember her name, but the 3 Scourge fleet, which the fleet itself is a bit of an oddity, not something you would normally encounter, it goes without saying, but in this case, we're not going to have the double tomb ship either, but we are going to have, what is it, maybe a battle cruiser and a bunch of Sechems, which are the light cruiser variant that have star pulse generators on their ships rather. So it's going to be weird exchange fighting off against this fleet, for they are going to be incredibly capable of just destroying my torpedoes really damn well. And even though I can destroy their decks to kind of deny that to a limited extent, when there's like 6 of these different ships, it's going to be a little bit tricky to do, let alone the fact that I want to focus on ideally a single ship at a time, with what we already seen in my last match against Space Marine. Just spreading out the damage kind of cost me the match quite notably, it goes without saying. I'm still a bit bummed out by that exchange. But we are going to have ourselves a bit of fun here, although the amount of skill options that I want to take against Necrons can be a little bit limited, since I don't really need Stasis Bomb due to the fact their inertialist drive can just blink them 9,000 unit range, so it's not like a Stasis Bomb is going to keep them in place. Disruption Bomb's not really needed because of Spear Crystal lenses, which does technically the exact same thing, but a little more reliable, I want to argue. And then everything else, I don't have Plasma Bomb, so it really is just a Maelstrom, so what I'm using is just increasing my durability with the Wraithbone Reinforcement, since it is an area effect that will buff all my ships for the 83 armor on top of the whole field, which thankfully does work against the lightning arcs of the Necron fleet. So I'm going to be incredibly durable here, but seeing only 1 ship is going to be a bit odd. I don't know what I'm expecting here outside the fact that there are running ships that I can tell. I just don't have... I'm just completely oblivious that they're Sekhms, because the main reason why the Sekhms are more of like a utility and support ship is because their weaponry itself, outside the Star Pulse generator, is terrible. They only have the same kind of weaponry as like the Jackal, I believe, the heavy frigate. Its weaponry, its number of lightning arcs, and the damage potential they do is the exact same. And there's the reveal of all the light cruisers at least. I spotted only 3 of them, but I know where they're at, so it's going to be no surprise that I'm going to have to turn around, especially with over half my fleet not even being anywhere nearby. And hell, even my 2 fighter squadrons could do decently against their fighters, their Night Shrouds. I forget. I'm completely out of the loop. I don't even remember what these Necron fighters are called, but either way. I get the concealment, they're just inconveniently chasing me and I'm revealed as a result. Thankfully, Necron are like the one faction that can't really punish this maneuver until they jump in. So it's not a big deal just yet. Just could potentially be very damn punishing against anything with lances, or at least a good plethora of long-range weaponry. So I just grabbed the objective for kind of security's sake, in case I want to play this out as a drawn-out type of match. Since I don't know where the light cruisers are and getting caught off guard by them, especially since I don't know if they're Shrouds or Kopeges, which would not be entirely ridiculous, but you never know when they could jump me. Since they can chase me really damn well, especially the Shrouds with the 270-degree arc on all their weaponry. It can be quite notable damage, especially if they jump in an awkward angle. But we're going to engage the battleship, or at least their flagship. Well, it's not even the flagship in all honesty, but everything jumps in here. They aren't... This is the reveal that they're not Shrouds, at least, due to the fact that they're already silent running. And we try and get what damage we can in. And thankfully, destroying the deck is incredibly easy, even though I haven't been prioritizing the deck, to be fair, since they kind of were silent running all this time. And I am so thankful that all those Star Pulse generators went off at once. That was a bit of a panic play, and it's going to cost them immensely if I'm able to capitalize on it. Although my not trying to turn around there and pausing briefly does cost my flagship a lot of boarding damage, which is going to be felt really damn soon, because after all, Necrons are almost as effective as Space Marines, outside the fact they have to do a consistent 2 points of troop damage every time. But torpedoes are now going to be amazing right now, since every single one of the Star Pulse generators has been burnt, and you saw it right there with that light cruiser nearly losing 2/3 of its health instantly, without even the pulsars helping to contribute. Although I may be losing track there, that could have been the one that just jumped that just also died. And try as my opponent might to get ramming damage in, it's not exactly convenient with Necron, is it now? Since you can't really accelerate your actual movement, you can just teleport and blink. And if they were able to effectively ram me, I don't need to tell you how painful that would be for me if they can get away with it. Although, I'm thankful that's not the case, and the torpedoes did notable damage. We only so far, after all this time, killed a single light cruiser, which thankfully does change with the main fleet, the battle cruiser. Okay, it was actually just a regular cruiser. I was thinking all this time it was a battle cruiser, considering the number of light cruisers we have to fight with, and also the ones that are like the cheapest of all the light cruisers as well, due to their limited amount of firepower at that. And the Star Pulse generator is not going to help them so much because they do not ignore armor. That may have been what my opponent was going for a little bit, probably trying to instantly kill my fleet with the sheer array of Star Pulses that they have access to. Sadly, that did destroy my torpedoes, but that was just inconvenient timing, I think, as opposed to my opponent actually planning for it. But missing those torpedoes is definitely a big whiff, because that could have been an instant kill right now. And my cruisers are not in the most convenient position to kind of capitalize on that. But its deck's gone, it's fleeing. It's just a matter if I want to finish it off. Or actually, its deck's not destroyed. I'm just wondering how the hell I did suddenly so much morale damage there instantly. Since after all, Necrons have like the best bravery of all the other factions after all. So I was a little bit shocked it took that additional morale damage as quickly as it did. Either way, all the decks are permanently destroyed. The flagship's technically still up, so they could actually repair that damage, but even then, it would still be some time as I try to somehow evade with my Phoenix. It's not working very well, needless to say. But it's not any terrible risk of dying at the same time. It's just not able to do the damage to kind of punish them for such a maneuver. And with, what is it, both these still have health, the flagship's still standing, but this is all but over, especially when the torpedoes seal the deal here. This was a bit of an odd match, and it shows how you probably should not be trying to get aggressive with Necrons, since the inertialist drive is a great way to also dodge those torpedoes, but there is a very strict window for when you can actually dodge them, or unless you are somehow able to predict them ahead of time, since both the Star Pulse Generator and the Jump can allow you to dodge those torpedoes incredibly well. And now with the destruction of the deck denying that, there is some weird interesting play mechanic going on there with getting those torpedoes in. Although it may hurt Necron more than it helps Asuryani, if it helps at all. Okay, for the next match we're face off against Tyranids, and this opponent I do not recognize, although they're still playing off against Tyranids, which in all honesty is the main matchup I am really excited for trying to understand and figure out for the Asuryani. Since I said way back to when I started, due to the fact that they're not really encouraged, if at all, to use their frigates, let alone their light cruisers, they kind of don't have the best way to reveal said ships, let alone like other fleets like the Corsairs and the Drukhari, but even then, I would still argue that Asuryani are probably in really good shape against both those fleets, ignoring the first match that I played off against, since torpedoes, hitting with those torpedoes is a big damn deal, so a little more patience just in my match with Fiat could have helped a lot in that regard, but with Tyranids, that is a truly terrifying type of matchup, I want to argue. Since they have the double rushes, their flagship has the potential Void Lurker, which my opponent will be utilizing for this match. So they can cross that distance, cross that gap incredibly well, especially when I don't know where their fleet is. If I'm caught completely off guard, especially with one of their main ships like the flagship, with its triple jump potential, as I'm going to dub it, then they can ram me, they can obliterate me, especially when we know they're hive ships. And these are going to be the ones with the strangle tentacles as well, so we're not really going to be face off against Pyroacid as well, which is another type of matchup I am really eager to try out. But first off, I am going to use the asteroid belts to kind of deny these fighters harassing me, even though maybe they're not as terrifying as they could be since they're only fighters, but hell, they could still kill my point defense, and they still go, what, 350 unit speed, or maybe it's 450 unit speed. I honestly can't remember for Tyranids specifically. I just know their fighters are the slowest of the group, with the bombers going, what now, 250 movement speed? So I would have to fly directly away from the ships to actually avoid their bombers for that to work, but we see the hive ships. I saw the two of them turning to the right, and that's going to influence what I'm going to be doing here for the next few maneuvers. Never mind, I have a beacon there to kind of cover the central path directly to the objective I'm heading to. But that was the tell I want to kind of go and pursue the fact that they're over on the right. Two juicy hive ships with a potential ship on the left. I never did check the second objective they captured to see if it was a cruiser or a bunch of frigates, in all honesty. But in truth, there is a cruiser on the far left, which is what's going on there. So they captured a lot faster than I was expecting, and I never checked it to really get that confirmation either. But I heard a beacon there. I was completely oblivious to the fact that there was a beacon being launched. Or was that my own beacon, with that said? I want to say it was my own, but I just heard a beacon. Oh, and it is actually the opponents there. That could have been a tell right now that they were jumping right on top of my ass. Because I could have looked for that, and that would have denied this surprise attack my opponent just did on me. With all these fighters and these boarding parties that are now coming at me. So I was caught completely flat-footed there. It was a little bit unfortunate because of that, since that beacon could have been an early warning for me. But the important thing to note is my opponent is not using the Synaptic Link upgrade. So, in theory, if I kill this flagship off quickly, I can break the other 2 hive ships without having to kill them. It's just another thing to have to remember is the cursed flagships don't have any penalties to their bravery. And I missed 2 beautiful torpedo salvos because I figured my opponent used their rush due to the sheer amount of time that went by. And sadly, this is why getting in close is a bit of a death sentence. I am miscontrolling this really badly right now, with 2 of my cruisers being obliterated immensely. And that glitch, if you saw that glitch with that hive ship, that was a bit hilarious too. But their flagship is down. They have the idea at this point on is to try and break their morale as quickly as possible. And using torpedoes is going to be key to that, hopefully. It's sadly not doing nearly the morale damage I kind of was hoping or expecting, since it only did like a small chunk. And sadly, those torpedoes just barely missed the mark. And I just barely missed the ram attempt too, which is also like compounding quite a bit. What was looking very promising with the flagship being a potential easy target, and being oblivious to the fact that a beacon was actually used, yeah, and my Phoenix also lost all its crew, keep that in mind too, since it kind of flew towards these boarding parties. It made itself very easy prey with that said too. And now I'm out of torpedoes, especially since that was inconvenient rush timing. Thankfully I dodged that rush because I was expecting my opponent to come straight at me, which is why I rushed, or boosted downward with that 1 cruiser. I was thinking I could have evaded that, but this is inconvenient since I'm actually now going to get boarded by the assault ships too. I am really bitter about this match because it's snowballing really damn quickly. Since I don't quite have the torpedoes anymore to kind of compound on this, although the morale is about to break on this 1 ship, and with the fire results that's going to be a done deal. It's just maybe not taking these boarding ships as seriously as I could have as well, since the top one is about to break. And that 1 cruiser does have the -75 morale, so it's entirely possible I could ruin his day really quickly. I just gotta get through his shields first, which, doing this ramming maneuver is probably a big mistake. The mindset was to maybe force it to break because I would have to get through all his shields otherwise. But I wasn't counting on the boarding damage to kind of be a factor. I figured the 1 cruiser could have done the damage necessary to kind of win this out for me. Now I'm just hoping to maybe do the morale damage necessary to kill the ship off, or at least force it to break before my crew dies. Which sadly is not nearly enough morale damage as I would have liked. So sadly this is going to be a loss, and one that I'm very bitter about as well. This has not been a good series of matches for me. Although I did also have a handful of easy victories, or at least simple matches that are probably not going to see the light of day since they weren't all that interesting to watch. I'm just showing you defeats because hey, you're probably sick and tired of seeing me win constantly, right?